Welcome back. It's time for Media Watch on France 24. We take a look at the top stories in the news media today. James Creedon has the info. Good evening.
Yes, good evening, Lana.
And we start with a shock announcement by Socialist presidential candidate François Hollande. He wants to tax the super rich, tax them very much, in fact.
Right, that's us in serious trouble as journalists. You know, we're going to, earning over €1 million a year. We're really caught. Right, I don't think we're concerned. But in any case, yes, it did shock many. And the idea is that if you're earning over €1 million a year, the revenue, superior to that will be taxed at 75%. So essentially what he's doing...
75% of what they earn goes to the state coffers.
Absolutely. So it's almost like putting a sort of a limit on what you can earn in France. It's a very, I suppose, it's certainly a headline-grabbing measure. And so if we have a look at what they're saying online, the right-leaning website Atlantico said, well, what the Bolsheviks dreamt of doing, François Hollande is actually going to do it. So they don't seem to be too impressed with the idea. They point out, and Rue 89, for their part, point out that people like Jean-Paul Ajon, now he's the CEO for L'Oréal, we have a photo of him here, he earned over 10 million euros last year, so 7.2 million of that would have gone to the taxpayer, or would have gone to the revenue commissioners if this were to be brought in. So certainly that's quite an extreme measure. Others point out, just briefly, Daniel Schneiderman says, look, at least we're hearing something concrete now, because Hollande has been posturing a lot in the last few months, and it's, his campaign has been short on specifics, so at least there's something specific according to him.
And he's sparking some debate.
Right.
You mentioned Jean-Paul Agon, CEO of L'Oréal, who makes 10 million a year, but how many people actually make that much here in France?
Right.
That's been a topic as well.
That's right, and the Huffington Post, the French version, has been looking into that, and it's about 0.04% of the population, so it's not that many people, and they look at high-profile people who do fall within that bracket. For example, Jean Dujardin, the star of The Artist, he earned 2.3 million euros last year, so he would perhaps be against this measure, and they're looking at various other actors in France.
Hollywood, he just got an Oscar. He could just make a career there.
He's probably planning on staying in LA anyway, so he's probably like, I don't care.
Staying with François Hollande's campaign, he's been trying to cast himself as Mr. Normal. That's been one of the themes of his campaign, by contrast to Nicolas Sarkozy is the idea.
Right.
How did he come across last night?
Right, because it was this big show he appeared on last night. We just saw pictures of it. It's where you meet members of the public, 14 members of the public, and this is actually a format that the media has said suits François Hollande. He comes across as your average bloke, as they say, and indeed one magazine, Marianne, said he came across as Monsieur Dugenou. Now that's a very French sort of expression. People were telling me in the newsroom this evening it means Mr. Everybody, but it's a kind of a negative thing to say as well, right? Mr. sort of, it also kind of means Mr. Nobody. So anyway, they're saying he came across as Mr. Everybody, but perhaps not with a lot of charisma. It
suggests mediocrity, is that what it is? Like, not so presidential?
I think that's kind of the idea. But at the same time, the 14 people who were there on set with him felt like he listened to their problems. So that would be a contrast to Sarkozy, who is perhaps more charismatic, but less Mr. Everybody.
You mentioned it just a moment ago, the success of The Artist at the Oscars. 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Actor. Politicians are trying to make this success their own today, it seems.
Right. It was great to be able to talk about this story yesterday, Lana, and to speak about something other than politics. And
yes,
now, of course,
I have to say,
today it has been politicised. They're all trying to own it.
How did they manage that? Please don't.
You can see here on this website, The Lab, it belongs to Europe 1, the artist La Grande Recoupe des Candidats, the candidates trying to sort of grab it and own it. For Nicolas Sarkozy, it shows that his measure, the Adopi measure, is now justified.
This was an anti-piracy law.
Exactly. He brought this in the past 5 years. So for him, it shows how, you have to protect culture. You have to,
the film industry.
That's right. In order for it to flourish, his measures were correct. And across the political spectrum, you've got François Hollande saying that this is great for French national identity, that it shows France as a cultural power is still important in the world. And then perhaps biggest fail goes to François Bayrou, the centrist candidate, who said that this is a success for made in France products. But of course,
so protectionism?
But you see, the thing is, it was pretty much made in Hollywood. It was filmed in Hollywood with US technicians, so it wasn't made in France.
And it got all these awards in Hollywood. That
right,
made it
and François Bayrou, one of his big campaign issues has been made in France products. We need to go back to the basics and have production in France. So François, it wasn't produced in France. You've got to have your facts right before you say things like that.
Staying with that presidential campaign, it's been a major topic, of course. Some journalists have found a more fun way to cover it, I suppose.
Right. It might be nice to get out of the newsroom for a while and go on a cycle
and
trip.
Go biking.
Right. Well, that's what two people did. Two journalists, Raphael Kraft and Alexis Monchauvet. 3 weeks ago, they left Paris for a cycle trip around the country, 3,500 kilometres, meeting average normal people in the street and trying to figure out how they feel ahead of the presidential election. It's a pretty kind of nifty, different idea. You can follow them on Facebook and Twitter.
With some very cute graphics, I have
great
to say.
Graphics.
That's adorable.
It is, and indeed they met, for example, I think we have pictures of Jackie and Sylvette, who they met in Saint-Dizier, this is in the Champagne region. Now they're going to vote Front National, and so it's an interesting way of, I suppose, getting people's reasons behind how they intend to vote. Now, a lot of people in France who vote far right don't tell the pollsters that they're going to vote far right.
This really puts a face on the poll figures.
Exactly, and their idea is, you know, they were very negative about Nicolas Sarkozy. They even called him a garden gnome. And when they were asked why they're going to vote for Marine Le Pen, they said, look, it's not so much that we want to vote for her, it's just that we want to vote against all the others. So it's really a protest vote. So it's an interesting way of figuring out how people feel, and you can follow them on Facebook and on Twitter as well.
I like the idea. Are you game?
Why not?
Tour de France, what do you think?
Tandem.
Yeah, I think we should. James
right.
Creedon,
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Go
Lana.
back your bags.
Right.
That was Media Watch on France 24. Stay with us. Up next is Web News. We round up the top internet content. What's buzzing online today?